Well, just hours before inauguration yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker signed a measure that gives constitutional officers pay raises, as well as pay raises for state lawmakers and executive agency directors. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY. Springfield's News and Talk, and you can call in live and local at 217-629-7970. Do you think that they deserve a pay raise? Again, you can call in 217-629-7970. You can also email bishoponair@gmail.com or find me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, and you can message us that way as well. But hours before being sworn in and taking the oath of office, you've got constitutional officers set to get pay raises. How much are they going to get? Well, after the legislature passed a bill that spends more than $1.7 billion on a whole host of things. It's a supplemental appropriation, a budget implementation bill. They call it a BIMP around the Capitol. It spends about $850 million for the state's budget stabilization fund. Comptroller Susana Mendoza said that it's responsible and bracing for inflationary pressures. Having emergency funds, she says, means that Illinois leaders are being accountable fiscal stewards for taxpayers. But at the same time, it also spends $460 million for helping hospitals deal with the cost of nursing, plus $400 million for the Large Business Attraction Fund. $400 million in that fund. Some people criticizing that as a slush fund for Governor J.B. Pritzker to use for pet projects. So we'll likely hear a lot more about that particular fund, but also $72 million for the Disaster Recovery Fund and a whole host of other spending of taxpayer resources. But the bill does have tucked in there pay raises for lawmakers. You're talking $12,000 pay increase, getting them up to $85,000 from where they were. But it's not just lawmakers going from $72,900 as their base pay to $85,000 as their base pay. You've got the salaries for the governor going from $181,000 to $205,000. The lieutenant governor from $140,000 to $161,000. The secretary of state going from $161,000 to $183,000. The attorney general $161,000 to $183,000, and the comptroller and treasurer are each going to get a pay raise of $140,000 to $161,000 annually. So those are the pay raises spelled out in the measure that the governor signed just before going to inauguration, ensuring that lawmakers, before they take their oath of office tomorrow, get those pay raises for the new General Assembly. Do you think they deserve it? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
You know, Greg, I don't know much about history, having been alive for about the last 5,000 years or so. At least that's what it seems like. But these guys were hired to do a part-time job, and they aren't doing that, let alone a full-time job.
Yep.
So I say we reduce their pay until they figure out what it is they need to be doing and get on track. They were all farmers originally when this state was founded, and this was part-time, not full-time work.
Now, state lawmakers considered part-time work. A lot of state lawmakers will push back and say they work full-time in their job. But also the argument was that, hey, you want to attract quality people. You don't want just millionaires there. You don't want just people who are bought out by special interests there. You want to attract quality people who can be part of the citizenry legislature. But that's the legislature. That's not the governor, the attorney general, the comptroller. They're all getting pay raises as well. And those are full-time jobs, but I mean, you're looking at $160,000 a year for the lieutenant governor position in Illinois. That's a pretty good salary.
It's a chunk of change, and the one that I don't have problems with, and it's not because political leanings or anything else, one I don't have problems with is the governor, only from the sense that the amount of people that the governor is supposedly responsible for and in charge of, if you match that up to any CEO in any business of that size,
it's a big deal.
You know, it makes a huge difference. But
it's a big deal.
Still, I don't believe any of them need a pay raise. I think they're all overpaid. And I don't believe for a minute that any of them, none of them in the legislature are working full time.
Well, as somebody who covers the legislature, it feels like a full-time deal when they're in these final days of session, like in lame duck session, because let me tell you, I've seen my wife maybe an hour a day. I come home and I'm like, I'm so sorry I'm working so late. She understands because it's little spurts, right? It's like, here we are at the tail end of session. I'm going to be busy for like 5 or 6 days, and it's going to be long hours. But at the beginning of session, it's, they come in, they gavel in. It's not just the pay they get, their base salary. They also get per diem. They also get travel. They also get lodging costs if they have to travel to Springfield and stay here. So there's even added costs onto all of that, and sometimes they get per diem simply by coming in on a Tuesday night, gaveling in, gaveling out, and then they'll work Wednesday. They get that per diem for Tuesday as well as Wednesday. So that's even extra added cost on you, the taxpayer, footing the bill for that. Your thoughts? Do they deserve a raise? Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Man, this sounds like a great gig if you can get one of those jobs, Greg. Like, you're making this sound like everybody should be applying for this. With those kind of benefits, that's pretty impressive.
Everybody can. I mean, there's certain requirements for you to try to become a state lawmaker, but listen, there are elections every 2 years for state representatives, unless, of course, a state representative decides to retire before the end of their term, and then the local party bosses get to pick whoever's the replacement.
I mean, we're all taking a pay cut when they raise taxes to pay for their new raises, so it's kind of a pretty terrible deal for us, but the fact that Illinois has so many people that need leadership but are unqualified to choose that leadership has put us in that position. And they are holding us hostage at this point because the way Illinois is set up with Chicago and all this other stuff, you have two different types of the demographics in Illinois are it's like a 50-50 split, in my opinion. And we're being held hostage. And all those people that are unqualified to pick leadership are the ones that continue to swing elections to the Democrats in Illinois. Those of us that don't need leadership and don't want leadership because we can take care of ourselves on a daily basis, we continue to lose elections. So until that flips in Illinois, we're stuck with it. And it's just going to be that way.
Yeah, I appreciate the call, and a lot of it's, gerrymandered districts, some questions about the mail-in voting policies that are in place. All of these things kind of work together in a cauldron of sorts to give us the landscape that we have now. And you talk about anytime they raise taxes in Illinois, essentially taxpayers are taking a pay cut because they pay higher taxes. Well, if you move to another state, I had a colleague who moved from Illinois to a different state, and HR notified him instantly saying, you got a pay bump, not from the company, but you got a pay bump because the taxes were lower where they moved. So he was able to keep more of his paycheck. So interesting to see all that. All right, stay tuned. We got to talk about, of course, the governor. He signed that bill to give pay raises to lawmakers, but the governor also was inaugurated yesterday for a second term. We'll hear some of his priorities laid out, but also some other statewide constitutional officers taking the oath of office just in time for that pay raise. So stay tuned. We'll get to that here with Springfield's Morning News on WMAY. Well, we've been talking about whether lawmakers and state constitutional officers like the governor and attorney general should get a pay raise. Got an email here. No raises for any of these elected politicians of Illinois. And we'll count the exclamation points here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's like 10 exclamation points there. So you can tell they're really serious. They don't think that these lawmakers or the constitutional officers or any elected officials in Illinois should get a pay raise. But that's what they're getting. The governor signed that bill, that $1.7+ billion spending package that included in it pay raises for lawmakers, constitutional officers like governor and attorney general and treasurer, plus you've got pay raises for executive agency staff, like, for instance, those who run the Department of Employment Security, who during the COVID pandemic still can't tell us how much fraud there's been. Those who run the Department of Children and Family Services, who've been found contempt of court for how they place children in state custody. Those who run the Department of Human Services, who have been found in contempt of court as well for how they delay in placing detainees unfit for trial. So you got these executive agency directors also set to get pay raises. All right, but yesterday the governor and other constitutional officers, they were part of inauguration. And the governor laid out some of his priorities. We'll hear some of that. But, of course, with the inauguration ceremonies at the Bank of Springfield Center, it was a big affair. A lot of happenings going on. Beautiful stage setting with the governor there with his family set to take the oath of office. And here's how that played out. And in particular, the governor laying out some of his policy priorities moving into the future. Here's the governor laying those things out from yesterday at the Bank of Springfield Center.
State your name.
I, J.B. Pritzker.
Do solemnly swear.
Do solemnly swear.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of Illinois.
And the Constitution of the State of Illinois.
And that I will faithfully discharge the duties.
And I will faithfully discharge the duties.
Of the office of Governor.
Of the office of Governor.
According to the best of my ability.
According to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Governor.
Thank you very much. And over the last year, I drove all across the state, and I couldn't help but notice that people had put up some signs in their yards that said, "Fire Pritzker." I was concerned about this until my kids pointed out that when people in their generation think something is really cool, they say, "That's fire." So I want to take this moment to thank everyone who put up those very encouraging signs. Since I took office, we've increased scholarships by more than 50%. Now let's focus on making tuition free for every working class family in Illinois. Focusing on the future of working families and making everyday life easier and more affordable for people is what I believe government ought to be all about. We've done a lot on this in recent years. Balancing the budget, paying off debt, and eliminating interest on overdue bills has made it possible for us to provide tax relief. Let's work toward more permanent tax relief. Why do we allow anyone to easily purchase a rapid-fire, high-capacity weapon that can kill dozens of unarmed people in under a minute? When I campaigned for re-election and promised to pass an assault weapons ban, 8 states already had one. Very soon, Illinois must be the 9th. And we ought to have a real accounting of the assault weapons currently in circulation. Let's get it done, and then the federal government should follow our lead.
So that was Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday laying out some of his policy priorities in his inauguration speech. It wasn't just the governor who was inaugurated yesterday. You also had other statewide constitutional officers that were inaugurated yesterday, including the Illinois Treasurer, Michael Frerichs, and the Illinois Attorney General, Kwame Raoul. Plus, you had the Comptroller, Susana Mendoza. She thanked both sides of the political spectrum for support, as she was the largest vote getter in the state.
Leader McCombie and Leader Curran and the 103rd General Assembly as we continue moving our state forward, because improving our state should be a bipartisan affair.
But you also had Alexi Janulius. He was elected the new Secretary of State, and he talked about Jesse White.
My wife and my 3 little girls to be the first person in 24 years to be able to say thank you to the people of Illinois for making me the new Secretary of State of the great state of Illinois.
And in talking about the first time in 23 years recognizing the work that White did.
As soon as I leave here, I will sign new executive orders ensuring ethics and integrity in the Secretary of State's office, transparency, good government, and using technology and innovation to eliminate the time tax that too many of you are paying every day just to access simple government services will be my administration's focus.
So the inauguration event at the Bank of Springfield Center, of course, they had a ball afterwards, and some of the happenings that are shared on social media about the ball. And this is from a fellow reporter at the State House. who went there and saw the glitz and glamour. And interesting to kind of see it broken down here with the imagery that was shared of people wearing fashionable dresses and neat little sets and designs, and even House Minority Leader Jim Durkin was there wearing a tux. And dancing and having a good time. But also you had Bruno Mars show up, and Bruno Mars performing after flying in privately to Springfield to perform at the governor's inauguration ball, including you had Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot in town as well. So they had a good time at the ball at Governor J.B. Pritzker's inauguration party. So there you go. That was happening in Springfield last night as we get ready to have more action at the Illinois State House on the final day of lame duck session, where they're going to take up a proposed gun ban and so much more still left to tackle. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk.